Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to live lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves.
Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer.
It is a joy and an honor to ask Noel McGrath to come up and light the Shabbat candles for us. So Noel, if you'll make your way up, we are on pages 3 and 2.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which we live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offering of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Let's sing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Thank you, Noel. We will turn to page 16 and read together one of the hymns, one of the psalms for Shabbat on page 16. Sing praise to Adonai with the lyre, and melodious song, with trumpets and the blast of the horn. Raise a shout before Adonai, the ruler. Let the sea and all within it thunder, the world and its inhabitants. Let the rivers clap their hands, the mountains sing joyously together at the presence of Adonai. For God is coming to rule the earth. God will rule the world justly and its peoples with equity. And we'll continue with Lecha Dodi. We'll turn to page 20 to welcome in the Shabbat bride, the Oneg, the joy of Shabbat, with Lecha Dodi. And during the last verse, when it says Boi v'shalom, we will stand up together. It's customary to stand up and turn and face the door of the synagogue. So we'll do that this evening to welcome the joy of Shabbat into our midst.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem tiferet v'li tehila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechuven elcha, Ki mekor haberacha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof maaseh b'machshava techila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, Ki va'orech kumi ori. Uri, uri, shir daberi, Kevod Adonai, alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We'll stand for Bo'e Shalom.
Bo'e v'shalom ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha u'v'tzola. Toch emunei am segula, Bo'e chala, Bo'e chala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela.
You may be seated. And on page 22, we will read another psalm for Shabbat, a song this time, a song for Shabbat. It is good to praise you, Adonai, to sing praises and hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp and voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai, how very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Together, planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my God, in whom there is no wrong. We'll continue with Chatzi Kaddish on page 26.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon v'yomechon, Uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Ba'agala, Uvizman kari v'yimeru, Amen. Yeshmei Rabba mevarach, Le'alam le'olmei almaya, Yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, Shemei dekudesha. Brichu Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imeru. Amen.
We'll turn to page 27. Entrances to holiness are everywhere, and the possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. There is no place on earth without the presence. We'll stand, we'll rise together as a community for the Baruch Hu on page 28.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
We'll continue in the Hebrew together, Ma'ariv Aravim, on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvein layla, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. We'll continue with the singing of Ahavat Olam on page 32.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadta, al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochmeinu uvkumeinu, b'shochmeinu uvkumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem nege, yomam v'halayla, ve'avatecha, al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai ohev
Torah is what God revealed to us and what we discern of God. Ideas and ideals, laws and mitzvot, our religious heritage. It unfolds our memories of Abraham and Sarah, of Moses and Miriam and the prophets. It is legislation and explanation, allowing questions that challenge and answers that inspire, all a quest for meaning. It is our way of life, a path for our souls, and the design for a better world. We'll continue with the watchword of our faith, the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. And we'll continue together on page 37 in the English. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. On page 38 and 39, Emet ve'emunah kol zot v'kayam aleinu. All this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. We'll read responsively on 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot.
That wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness.
That there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam, ze'eli anu ve'ameru. Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch, le'olam va'ed. V'nemar kifada Adonai et Yaakov, ug'alo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
As we turn to page 43 for Hashkivenu, a prayer for peace and God's presence as a shelter of protection, I offer this prayer for Kenosha. Eternal One, hearts are broken tonight in Kenosha and beyond. Feelings of hurt, anger, and sadness fill the space. Lift up the prayers of those in pain. Wrap them in your comfort. Send strength to hands that heal, courage to brothers and sisters working for peace and racial equity, compassion to one and all. The stones, matzevot, that Jacob used to mark your holy places, they were unhewn. No iron, no implement of war shall touch them. That which is sanctified may not be formed in violence. As you taught, Lo yisa goy el goy cherev, let nation not lift up sword against nation. Lo yulmadu od milchamav, nor learn war anymore. Let us not lift up weapons, but voices and ears to teach, listen, and understand one another. Compassionate, merciful one, turn every human heart toward love. Guide our feet toward justice. Help us walk hand in hand toward peace.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Amen.
And we'll turn to page 44 for Yismechu.
ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. המקדשי שביעי, המקדשי שביעי, כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך. ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה וראשית.
On page 47, prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. We'll stand together for tefillah on page 46.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, Umevi Geula livnei v'neihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מחמולך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. At the top of page 55, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. And on page 57 at the top, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu ba'amcha Yisrael u'tefilatam ba'ahava tekabel u'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, and in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. And we'll read together on page 59. When we behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place, what are we humans that you are mindful of us? We mortals that you take note of us. You made us little less than divine, adorned us with glory and majesty. You gave us dominion over your handiwork, laying the world at our feet. How majestic is your name throughout the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot. We'll continue with a prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, on page 60.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha ve'al kol ha'amim tasim le'olam tasim le'olam ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha. Ve'al kol ha'amim tasim le'olam, tasim le'olam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'v'chol sha'a b'shlomen u'v'chol sha'a b'shlomecha. Shalom, shalom, shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha. Ve'al kol ha'amim tasim le'olam, tasim le'olam. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael bashalom.
I love that Shalom Rav. It was written by our very own Cantor Perper and his friend Jordan Franzel.
Thank you, Rabbi.
As we turn to Misha Beirach on page 253, our hearts turn to those dear members of our community who are in need of refuat hanefesh or refuat haguf, a healing of soul or a healing of body. And those we love and who love us, they are a blessing in our lives. And we pray for their refuah shlema, their full healing. Particularly in our hearts and our minds, we are thinking of Shandol Bat Frida Malka, Julie Borochoff, Margot Raz, Carol Dubin, Otto Feller, Samsara Vizkaya, Sharon Rotman, Eliyahu Ben Maxinamala, Bob Radke, Lyle Rubel, Mark Cook, Moshe Ben Nechama, Jean Bass, Alan Turner, Steve Toplinsky, Myron Dvorkin, Esther Cohen, Lauren Cheris, Matt Cheris, Lisa Furstad, Terry Finch, Harav Ilana Miriam Bat Chava, Faye Levin, Sarah Rachel Bat Yocheved Alexander, David Feldner, Prue Precourt, Linda Berlin, Alan Elias, Tia Barrett, Wendy Salzberg, Steve Plotkin, Kathy Peltz, Afram Ben Naftali, Emma and Max, Doug Cruz, Nadiva Sarah Bat Liba, Sharon Rothstein, Devora Bat Yehuda Malchus, Judith Naiman, Carol Rovner, David Goldstein, Marilyn Harmon, Mark Berlin, Chris St. Martin, Ellen Futterman, Risa Cyril Bat David Vachaya Barry Bursack, Debbie Kelly, Janet Meister, Michael Messi, Ahuva Yocheved Bat Chaim Vilea, Susan Sack, and Mickey Dolgan. If there are names that should be added to this list or names that I pronounced incorrectly, I invite you to hold them in your heart as we turn to the words of healing. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Blessed are you, the source of healing. We'll sing Misha Berach together.
Misha Berach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'imoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imoteinu Mikor HaBracha La'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We'll take a moment now for silent prayer for the words that are in your heart.
Hiu leratzon imre fi vehegion libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri vegoli Adonai Tzuri vegoli. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. Hiu leratzon imre fi vehegion libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri Vegoli Adonai Tzuri Vegoli.
Indeed, truly, may the words of our heart be heard by the God above. There is a story about a young boy named Simon. Simon lives in a small town, and there's a dangerous town a little ways over. This is not a true story. His father, Menachem, the leader of their town, has warned him not to go there. Simon is feisty and young, and one day he lets his curiosity get the best of him. He takes a friend, Zach, and they go to the town against his father's wishes. Menachem finds out and grounds Simon. He's angry that his son didn't listen, but eventually he forgives him. A few weeks later, an edgier, evil relative lures Simon back to the dangerous town. Simon gets swept up into a huge crowd. Afraid and unsure what to do, he calls his dad. Menachem rushes to him, and thankfully he's able to save him. In the crush of people, though, Menachem is not able to save himself. Simon is convinced that this is his fault. He leaves home guilty and afraid, worried that his family will never forgive him. Fear often stands in the way of mending relationships. We see these family dynamics of deceit and rage and fear, especially with Jacob and Esau. Last week, we read that Esau handed Jacob his birthright for a bowl of lentils, and then discovered that Jacob stole their father's final blessing. Esau was devastated. Feeling betrayed, angry, and hurt, he threatened to kill Jacob. Afraid for his life, Jacob fled to his uncle's home. There, he worked hard as a shepherd, building the flocks and making a name for himself over 20 years until he was very wealthy. Now, Jacob must see Esau for the first time since the stolen blessing. In this week's Torah portion, we read, Vayashuvu hamalachim el Yaakov lemor, banu el achicha el Esav, v'gam holech likratcha va'arba me'ot ish imo. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother Esau. He himself is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him. The biblical commentator Rashi, Ramban, Nachmanides, the great Nachmanides, uses this verse to explain the next verse, which begins, Jacob was greatly frightened. The verse goes on to emphasize Jacob's feelings with the words vayetzer lo, meaning his inclination or his instinct to fear. The repetition of emotional verbs cues us into Jacob's emotional turmoil. Many readers and commentators will point to that 400-man army as the source of Jacob's fear. 400 men would have been quite a sight. If I were Jacob, I would have been afraid too. In the biblical world, though, traveling with bodyguards or in military formation was normal for caravans or tribal groups. That was how the Israelites traveled through the wilderness with the tabernacle. So let's look at Jacob's fear from a different vantage point. Tensions were very high between these two brothers. Jacob's last meeting with Esau 20 years ago was painful. Esau's grief clear. Jacob knew that in carrying out God's prophecy to lead our people, he had greatly wounded Esau. This was his brother he did this to. He was afraid to apologize. He did not know if Esau would forgive him. Would they survive this rift in their relationship? What if Jacob meeting Esau reopened Esau's wounds? There's a concept that I think most of us are familiar with by now, known as flight, fright, or freeze. The typical human responses in times of danger. When Jacob heard that Esau was planning to kill him, he chose flight to avoid Esau. 20 years later, Jacob has grown up quite a bit. He has a family with 12 children to provide for, and he's learned the value of hard work. Once again, Jacob faces a stressful moment, but he's not the same man. In the same verse, we're given a window into his psyche. Jacob took action. He did not allow his fear to paralyze him. He came up with a way to apologize to his brother. He wanted to mend his relationship with Esau. He offered Esau a gift, much of the wealth he created while working for his uncle. I hear this as Jacob saying to Esau, "Our relationship is worth more than this fortune that I've built." When Esau sees Jacob, he runs to greet him, embraces him, falls upon him, and kisses him. And the brothers weep together. In the Torah scroll, in the word vayishakehu, and kisses him, every letter is dotted for emphasis. Rashi notes that according to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it's evident that Esau hated Jacob. Therefore, if the verse had been written without dotting each letter, it would have assumed that Esau did not kiss Jacob out of love. The dotting teaches us that this kiss was uncharacteristic. Esau had genuinely tender feelings toward his brother in that moment. It wasn't just Esau. Both brothers weep. The JPS commentary teaches that Jacob weeps as a release from the emotional tension. He built up his anxiety over 20 years. The reunion itself was heartwarming. You can almost feel the relief wash over Jacob as his brother embraces him. Esau genuinely forgives Jacob, and the two are able to repair, if not fully restore, their relationship. How many of us have had similar issues? When have we endangered treasured relationships, allowing hurt and time to create distances we thought we couldn't bridge? Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and it can be a wonderful time to spend with loved ones. But maybe you had a fight with someone, and you're uneasy about seeing them again. These last couple of years were very difficult. I know that I had moments where I was stressed out and snapped at family members. Let's go back to our story. Years pass. Eventually, Simon's friends convince him to return home. He confronts his uncle and learns the truth of his father's death. He banishes his uncle and takes his rightful place as leader of his community. You've probably guessed by now that I'm talking about The Lion King. It's a Disney classic, and Simba, Simon, Mufasa, Menachem, what can I say? But it's a good example of how to heal family trauma. If Simba had succumbed to his fear, he would have never returned to his family. He would have missed out on the beautiful and comforting relationships with his mother and his best friend and his new wife. He would not have taken on the mantle of leadership that he was destined for. We cannot allow fear to paralyze us, to keep us from rebuilding our relationships. The consequences are too great. Let Jacob be our example for how to mend relationships, how to hold our fear rather than let it stop us. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be God's will. It is my honor and pleasure to call up past presidents Ben Marin and Linda Berlin to open our ark doors for Aleinu. We'll rise together on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד.
You may be seated. And our thoughts turn to loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, and we'll turn to page 294. While their physical presence is no longer, we feel them with us in our hearts. Their memories shine brightly, a light that guides us. And at this time, our Congregation Shalom community is commemorating the life in the period of Shiva for Bernie Sokol, and during the period of Shloshim for Dennis Blackman, Muriel Kritzik, Gilbert Offenhartz, Jean Robertson, and Mindy Spitz. And we're commemorating the lives of those who have passed in years past, their yard sites: Bernard Bensman, Arthur Bob Berg, Paul Burns, Maurice W. Bonnick, Edith Chulak, Henry Dietz, Philip Dunn, Anna Ross Adelstein, Irene Adelstein, Fred Jack Emmerich, Lawrence Evans, Gertrude Feingold, Meyer Fox, James L. Gold, Harry B. Goodman, Tib Gorbitz, Samuel Granoff, Lawrence Herskovitz, Max Hoffman, Abe Kaminsky, Myron Katz, Molly Kleiner, Elizabeth Colmes, Mary K. LeBranch, Samuel Lacombe, Eva Leopold, Stanley Levy, Rose M. Levin, Norman Mopner, Dr. Kenneth Mendelson, Michael Neufeld, Max Newberger, Edward Plotkin, Fred Raffel, Morris Rotman, Lester Vance Solinsky, Ann Schneider, Erwin Schuster, Carol Schnoll, Beverly Shuminsky, Harold Sheffield, Ida Singer, Anna Sosman, Simon Tolkien, Barbara Weber-Zamsky, and Tilly Ziegler. If there are names that you would like to add to those we're commemorating, please feel free to call the office and add those names. And if there are names that I mispronounced or other names that you'd like to share with the community, please do so as my eyes meet yours. We will rise in body and spirit for the words of Kaddish Yatom on page 294. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shmei Rava, ve'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe Shmei Rabba Mivarach Leolam Lalmei Almaya Yit Barach Vishtabach Vit Ba'ar Vit Romam Vit Nase Vit Hadar Vit Alev Vit Halal Shmei Dekudasha Barichu Le'ela Minkol Birchata Vashirata Tushbechata Venechemata Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for blessing, and together we say, Amen. And just as the words of Kaddish speak of cherishing and celebrating life, we turn our attention to the life of our congregation. It's my pleasure to invite up our president, Brent Arnold, to offer some announcements on behalf of the synagogue. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Well, happy Thanksgiving, my fellow congregants. While life has been a challenge for so many of us, it is really important to take this time to realize what we have to be thankful for. Our world is far from perfect, and what we saw this week in Kenosha is a glaring reminder of that. Though in the coming week, I hope you spend time with your loved ones and friends and remind them exactly what you are thankful for. I remain thankful to Congregation Shalom for providing us community, for giving us meaning and purpose in our lives, and for providing us the means to look within ourselves. Please join our clergy and our choir and I at our annual Thanksgiving service on this Sunday, November 21st at 7 o'clock at North Shore Presbyterian Church in Shorewood at 4048 North Bartlett Avenue. It's at 7 o'clock on Sunday night at North Shore Presbyterian Church in Shorewood. You're welcome. Have you been up all night practicing your dreidel spinning skills? Cantor, I know you have.
Yes.
Well, Hanukkah is just around the corner. Our Shalom family Hanukkah service will be on Friday, December 3rd at 6:45. I look forward to lighting the Hanukkah candles and feeling the warmth of the light with all of you. Last night, we had our November Board of Trustees meeting where we had a very full agenda. We discussed our upcoming butterfly garden, the High Holy Day service survey, upcoming adult education opportunities, Hanukkah member phone calls, our endowment, staffing needs, and our current mask policy. It was a busy meeting, but I want to thank our entire board for their steadfast dedication to Congregation Shalom. I also want to remind you all that these are open meetings and all congregants are welcome and invited to attend. Another way you can participate is by filling out the Kishrei service that was created by our very own Rabbi Pozlowski. Thank you, Rabbi. It is a great way for us to connect our congregants to congregants with common shared interests. Our Social Action Committee is also partnering with Tikkun Ha'ir on a holiday gift drive where we are collecting new women's clothing and socks until December 20th. Please feel free to bring those items into the temple office. We had a very full Shalom Voices for Justice meeting on Tuesday where we discussed racial and ethnic disparity in state prisons, criminal justice reform in Wisconsin, the coalition of lead emergency in Milwaukee, voter integrity, and much, much more. It is nice to see the great work this committee is doing right here at Congregation Shalom. The gift shop is open and has a lot of great Hanukkah items just for you. The candy and the Israeli chocolate isn't so bad either. So feel free to stop in for all your Hanukkah shopping needs. Bagels, Books, and Babies returns on Saturday, tomorrow, November 20th at 10 o'clock a.m. It will be great to have all our youngest and most observant congregants crawling around the temple once again. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I am thankful to all the great people at Congregation Shalom for making this place so special. I look forward to seeing you all on Sunday as we represent Congregation Shalom at our Thanksgiving service. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Yasher Koach, Brent. Wonderful announcements. We will sing our closing hymn on page 328, a Sephardic melody of Ein Adir.
Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein adir k'Adonai ve'en baruch keven Amram. Ein gedola k'Torah ve'en dashenea keYisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein hadur k'Adonai ve'en vatik keven Amram. Ein zaka k'Torah ve'en chachamea keYisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein tahor k'Adonai ve'en yachid keven Amram. Ein kabira k'Torah ve'en lamdenea keYisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein podek Adonai ve'en tzadik keven Amram. Ein kedosha k'Torah ve'en tomechecha keYisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael. Mitpiel umitpiel, yevorach kol Yisrael.
together for Kiddush on page 8. Page 5.
We sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Amen. L'chaim l'shalom.
A nice vintage.
Shabbat shalom.
Say something last week and forgot.